Thank you. What a pleasure to be here, and special thanks to Duke for this invitation. It's been an absolutely incredible experience so far. I asked Duke, what is it going to be like to go to the DO lectures? He said, dude, just show up. I promise you it's going to be fantastic. And it has been. Ever since I got on the van and at the airplane, and I met Chris, and we had this incredible 2-hour conversation up towards Santa Rosa, and the conversations have just continued on and on. It's fantastic. So it's very exciting for me to be with you here today and talk about something very dear and near to my heart and to my mind, this topic called biomimicry. How many people have heard about biomimicry? Is it pretty common to everybody? Okay. I'm excited to give this talk because normally when I give a talk about biomimicry, I'm talking to either a technical audience or a business audience, and I'm trying to make a case for it, technically or from a business perspective. But today at the DO lectures, I've been invited to talk about it from a more experiential point of view, what it's been like for me for the last 4 years working in this field, and it's been a wild ride. It's been nothing short of a wild ride. And here's a little term that Janine Binyas came up with that describes the experience of working in this field, and we call it muddy knees and epiphanies. And that's really what it takes to get this done. It's a really interesting, fascinating world that requires a kind of a special type of consciousness, a special approach to getting the work done, and it's a form of wayfaring, and that's kind of what I'm going to explore today. Before we get started, though, I want us to do a daydream together, and this is kind of a way we'll get into the experiential part of biomimicry. So recall with me, if you will, a time when you were a kid, maybe, let's say between the ages of 5 and 10, and I bet most of you had these kind of experiences before, where you were out in nature and you had some type of experience that rearranged your mind, that gave you kind of some sense of yourself in a completely different way, some type of an opening. For myself, it happened when I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Texas in a place called the Laguna Madre, the Mother's Lagoon, which is this incredible tidal flat between Padre Island and the Gulf Coast of Texas. And I used to fish there with my father and my grandfather, and we used to fish in these knee-deep tidal flats. And I remember a moment when I was fishing with them, and we'd been fishing all day, and it's strenuous, and it's very hard. I think it was 7 years old, where I had this amazing experience of my knees in the sea, my feet in the seagrass, these beautiful seagrasses where the crabs live and where the fish feed upon. And the feeling of that seagrass, and then the warm salt water on my knees, and then I was looking up at this incredible sky full of pelicans and birds, and some of them were diving down and getting fish, and the water's so clear I could see all the crabs. And then I was surrounded by these older men that I really felt an incredible amount of love and connection to. And I had one of these epiphany moments. It's like the abundance and the brilliance and everything that's here right now is absolutely magical. And it just deeply imprinted on my nervous system. And I bet most of you have had those kind of experiences growing up where you were outside and the stimulation of all those different things opens you up in a way that you'd never been opened before. And that's a lot of what goes on in biomimicry. And if you'll try to hold on to an experience like that as I'm talking today, I think it might be an interesting window or gateway into this world of biomimicry. So just briefly, well, why is biomimicry important? And I'll just start with that, is because I think most of us are disassociated or divorced from that kind of feeling on a daily basis, especially in our work environment. Most of us live in an environment that doesn't support those kind of experiences, that kind of connection with nature. And all of us need that. We need it on a very deep, on a soul level. But most of our work environments, most of the things that we do these days are disassociated from that experience of being an animal and having a sense of abundance around you and that you're connected to it. And a lot of us could argue, I think, that society is really suffering that, especially from our children. But let me just talk briefly about what biomimicry is. This is our definition of it. It's the conscious emulation of the genius of nature, or nature's genius. And the words here are really important. Conscious, we say, because it's a lot of times biomimicry happens accidentally. So you could say something got designed and someone can say, oh, that looks like a bird feather, or that looks like a shark fin. But what we're doing is we're building a methodology that allows us to go deeply into nature, study nature, and then to begin to bring that information back into the design world. And so that becomes the conscious emulation of the genius of nature. And we use these photo pairings often to kind of describe what that looks like. So you can get it relatively quickly. Anybody know what it is on the left-hand side? Termite mound, yeah. So here's a termite mound that inspires a passive heating and cooling, passive cooling system in a building in Harare, Zimbabwe, directly mimicking the passive ventilation structure of a termite, where they can keep the ambient temperature inside the termite mound very constant, which is what they need to do in a desert environment. What about the next one? What do you think that next? Yep, humpback whale. So humpback whale inspires a new type of turbine blade that is extremely dynamically efficient. Those little bumps on the fin are called tubercles, and they help the humpback whale at really high speeds do some amazing fluid dynamics. So that's being mimicked now in a range of products. And then we have the beginning of what we call artificial photosynthesis, which is learning from plants how to make energy directly using photosynthesis instead of using the biochemical or the non-biochemical methods that we do now. So that's quickly, again, I'll just mention it's the art of going to nature and understanding how nature has already solved a problem that could be useful to us, and then we apply it to a design challenge. Just some quickly more explanations to show that this is beginning to have mainstream implications. Here's the Japanese bullet train that is directly mimicking the mathematics and the aerodynamics of a kingfisher beak. Here's a company in California that's making green cement, Calera, that's mimicking the way coral reefs are formed, basically how microorganisms create calcium carbonate. Here's a company that's backed by Vinod Khosla, the big financier, that's saying we can begin to make concrete, we can take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and fix it into our building structures just like coral reefs do. We can make a new form of concrete. Here's a company called Pure Bond, or a product called Pure Bond that was developed by Columbia Forest Products, and Columbia Forest Products makes a range of wood products. They had made a cabinetry system that was a green cabinetry system with sustainably harvested wood, but they had an adhesive in there that was not working for them. It was off-gassing with formaldehyde and some other bad things. So they luckily were able to look to a biomimetic solution, and they mimicked the protein structure of an underwater mussel to get that glue to be able to work to tie the cabinetry together. So they created a product called Pure Bond, which is completely biodegradable, works underwater, does amazing properties that's directly mimicking the mussel glue. And here's another one. Qualcomm is a company in San Diego that is making display technologies that's mirroring the morpho butterfly wing. Now, why would they want to do that? Big problem with daylighting onto screen technology. You know, if you take your cell phone or a screen outside and you get the really intense lighting, Mirasol said, I wonder how this happens in nature. How do we get that beautiful iridescent light that you see on a morpho butterfly wings in the bright daylight? Well, it turns out the scales of the butterfly wings have these little ridges on, they're scaled, and they refract light in a very certain way. Then the way it bounces, it looks like blue in our eyes. So Mirasol and Qualcomm are taking that, what's called structural color, the scale structure of a butterfly wings, and putting it in display technology so that they can create color in the screen that's bouncing light instead of using pigment and dyes in the screen technology. So these are the kinds of things that are going on in this field, and it's just fascinating. Here's another one with Nissan that's looking at swarm intelligence and how fish school and how fish move, and they never seem to collide with one another. They use something called simple rules, and you can create an algorithm around it. And Nissan is looking to the cars of the future that would be able to use swarm intelligence and move like birds or like insects do when they move and never collide with each other. So we're looking about the megalopolis of the 21st century. We're going to have these type of swarm intelligence technologies to move people and things through systems. But that begins to beg the question, but why would we need to do this? Why is it that humans need to look to the genius of nature? You know, what's the point? We're a pretty clever species. Well, it turns out we're a really young species. We just showed up here. If you think about 3.8 billion years of evolution, humans have been around about 200,000 years. We're just brand new. We just showed up on this planet, and we're kind of acting as such. You know, we're a young, arrogant kid, let's say, that's starting to play with matches and have all kind of fun. But I think we're starting to feel that we've scaffolded away from some really important systems and things that we can do in our life. And I think a lot of us are feeling that right now. It feels like we've built this rickety scaffolding up in the sky, and we're all kind of up here swaying, saying, how the hell are we going to get down from here? It's like kids climbing up a tree. I'm sure most of you did that when you were a kid, and you climbed real high in the tree. That was a lot of fun climbing, and then you go like, how in the hell am I going to get down from here? Well, I think that's where we are. But it turns out when we look to a sustainable world, and how are humans going to figure out sustainability? Well, a sustainable world, 3.8 billion years in the making, already exists. And it's the art of looking back to that we have to do. So from a biomimicry perspective, what we're saying is it's time to introduce this world of 3.8 billion years of wisdom and success and resilience to the people who are going to redesign our world. And Janine Benjamin says pretty much we have to reimagine everything. Everything we're doing right now has to be reimagined, redesigned, because it is really scaffolded away from the reality of 3.8 billion years of evolution. So that's where we come in. We are a new formation of a company called Biomimicry 3.8. Anybody know what 3.8 might stand for? 3.8 billion years we could say billions of years and brilliant solutions. So the art of biomimicry and the science of biomimicry is going into that 3.8 billion years and begin to understand what are the deep patterns and principles and processes and methods that we need to understand and bring that into our designed world, and how are we going to do that? And our vision is a world mentored and empowered by nature's genius, a human world, a built world that has and embodies that nature's genius that's been around for so long. And how are we going to get at that? Can you pour me a little more water? Yes, I can. So how we're going to get at that is we're going to train, connect, and equip a global network of biomimicry leaders who then transform the world by using these nature's design core and principles. So that's what our company does, is we're really training people to go back, thank you, and become leaders and change agents in their communities and their companies and their government agencies, and begin to bring these ideas to bear wherever they are. So now we'll turn to the experiential part of what's it like to try to practice this. This is where we get to the muddy knees, thank you. Muddy knees and epiphanies. So there's three kind of main branches of things that have to come together to practice this new field of biomimicry. And this is after 14 years of work with clients. We've worked with over 250 clients ranging from Kohler to Nike to Procter & Gamble to HOK Architects, a wide range of clients and companies. And what we've figured out that in order to get at this, there are three aspects that have to be integrated in this practice. There's an ethos side or a core values side of it. There's the emulation side of it, which are the really hard skills of taking biological information and putting that into the design realm, making that biological information accessible to an engineer, a product designer, a device designer, and so forth. And then a huge part of this is the reconnection piece, and I'll talk about that, and that's where the muddy knees and epiphanies come in. The connection piece is really learning how to connect with nature and what we call the genius of place in a way that has not typically been accessible for people that design our worlds. And so it's creating experiences and frameworks and ways that designers can begin to look deeply into the genius of place and begin to take that material, that really valuable genetic material, if you will, forward into their design practice. And so the interesting thing that happens when you do that, when you really work hard on the value side of it, when you really work hard on the emulation side of it, and you work hard on the reconnect of it, a common experience that we have is this idea of muddy knees and epiphanies. And what does that mean, muddy knees? There's a lot of layered meaning to that, but it's the ability to go out into the natural world and get down and get dirty and kind of get out of your comfort zone, like a lot of what we're trying to do here at Do. And it's that disruptive part of getting out of your normal patterns of thinking and getting your knees muddy that create those breakthrough insights and those experiences, like I was just describing when I was 7, that allow you open your mind up to innovation possibilities that you couldn't have seen before if you weren't stimulated in that way. So the muddy knees, that's the part of it. And by getting down and getting dirty with emulate, reconnect, and ethos, these epiphanies emerge. And it's not something you can plan for, you can design, or you can push for. It's a process of practicing these. And everybody that does it at a certain point has some type of epiphany moment that yields these breakthrough insights. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, it's incredible to get your knees muddy, and that's going to be metaphorically or actually going out into nature. When you have these things in mind, it gives a different purpose and a different way to interact with nature. And it's really great. One of the main frameworks that we use as we're doing ethos, emulate, and reconnect is something we call life's principles. And life's principles is a distillation of about 20 years of work that Janine Benjamin started when she was working on her book. And the core idea behind this is asking the question, what are the principles by which organisms have evolved over time and become successful and resilient in their genius of place? And so what we've done is distilled these patterns and said organisms and systems that tend to adhere to these principles evolve to survive, be resource and material efficient, adapt to changing conditions, integrate development with growth, be locally attuned and responsive, and use life-friendly chemistry as the mega principles. Organisms that adhere to that, they tend to survive and thrive over time. The ones that don't tend to go extinct. And so we say failures are the fossils, and the ones that we call the A-team, the champion adapters, those are the ones that have been around for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, adhering to these principles. So when we begin to design things or think about a design challenge, we say, would that land within life's principles or not? And we say to a company, do you want to design something within these margins, or you can keep out there on the side margins out here, but the chances of this product being successful in the long time are severely compromised if you don't figure out these principles. Life has been doing things like this for 3.8 billion years. You can either get in it or you can continue to work on the margins at your own peril. So we take this framework and we have about 6 layers in that actually go into really deep strategies that correlate with these different mega principles. It's a really sophisticated system now that's continuing to evolve, and we have a university network of about 100, and we have K through 12 teachers that are using it in the classroom, and then this is what we use with clients in an experimentation basis on innovation. We use it internally. We went through a biomimetic process to come up with our new logo and our new name, basically. And so we began to ask ourselves, as we needed to rebrand, and thanks to Duke Stump for telling us, you guys really need to rebrand. Your branding sucks so bad. And he was absolutely right. And he gave us the early catalyst to say, you guys have to get this right because you have a big message to tell to the world and people are confused by your brand right now. You really have to pull it together. So we went into a muddy knees and epiphanies kind of process trying to figure out how can nature tell us how to rebrand? What is it that we need to understand what we're doing from life's principles and our core function in the world? After a lot of muddy knees, and we even got to some bloody knees at some point internally, we came up with this. And does anybody happen to know what that might represent, the logo? I'm just curious. We're just coming out with this right now. Any thoughts on what that is, representation? Pardon me? Yeah, there's some peace signs in it.
It's like branching of a leaf.
Yep. So it's actually a representation of something called Murray's Law. And if you haven't looked into Murray's Law, it's a really fascinating concept. So it turns out nature distributes things through plants, through vascular systems, through pretty much every distribution system in nature adheres to something called Murray's Law. And it's the most friction-free way to move gases, liquids, healing things throughout a system. So if you think about our respiratory system and lungs, how they branch out, if you think about root branching, if you think about anything branching in nature and moving energy and materials, it adheres to this thing called Murray's Law. So our company, we envision ourselves as a distribution system. We have this amazing access to 3.8 billion years that we need to distribute worldwide. So our company is basically a Murray's Law company. We're going to be branching out. We're going to be spreading things, hopefully healing things to the planet in the form of nutrients. And so we're a system. We're a global network system that's going to distribute according to that. This was a very, very hard-won process to get through that went through several muddy knees and epiphany cycle. And we have 4 founders, myself included, very strong ideas, working with 2 brilliant designers that Duke recommended us to, one naming consultant and a brilliant designer, that took us through this process that forced us to think at a level that we hadn't before and redefine ourselves as a company that says we're uniquely qualified in the world to do this, and the world needs this really badly. So we're going to be the Murray's Law of biomimicry. So I'll leave you with a couple of do's that I came up with. I'd say do biomimicry and learn skillful wayfaring in a 3.8 billion year trajectory. So think about 3.8 billion years as a long trajectory. We can start living and designing within that trajectory using biomimicry as a wayfaring tool, or we can continue going off kind of in cul-de-sacing into the margins. But biomimicry is a skillful wayfaring system, if you will, once you learn it and you really learn how to practice it. And then I'd say do muddy knees and epiphanies, and do muddy knees and epiphanies to reattune to your place, to your genius of place, and evolve along with it, because that's what this is about. It's about adapting and evolving to new changing conditions and learning as you go along. And then the final quote, Albert Einstein seems to be a theme in this, in this conference. This is the third Albert Einstein quote, so he's here with us, I guess. But this is the one that when you think about muddy knees also as a stance of humility in the world, and that's a big part of it. You know, humans, it's easy, I think, at some time for us to feel arrogant as a species. This was the one that keeps me on my muddy knees, the Albert Einstein, I have this on my desk, is that we still don't know 1/1000th of 1% of what nature has revealed to us. So there's a lot of great work out there ahead of us. I mean, if you ever get bored or get tired, you know, pull this quote up and you go to work, because we need a lot of people working on this. We need all that wisdom, we need all that information flowing into into the things that we build, the way we do our societies, the way we manage everything. And I also want to leave you with an invitation as the DO Network to come join the Biomimicry Network, because I am convinced that there's so much guts and talent and optimism within this network. We would really love to join up. We've got thousands of biomimics around the world, and we're growing really quickly. We would love to, a lot of them are analytical and scientific types, and I think they could really benefit from the do energy, which is this optimistic, get it done, hyper brave type of people. And we would love to mash up the biomimicry community and the do community. So open invitation, come see us in Montana, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for hosting us. This is a beautiful place, and thanks again, Duke, for the invitation.